So thank you all for coming to my talk this evening on accessibility from a .NET developer's perspective. I'm excited to be here and thank you for having me. First off, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Rachel Breeze. I'm a C#, SQL Server and Umbraco developer. I'm not a front-end developer. Having said that, I believe everyone on the team is responsible for making their websites accessible. I'm also an Umbraco MVP. I'm part of the Umbraco back office accessibility team, which is a community initiative. So Umbraco is, for those people who don't know, it provides a framework for building websites and web applications. It abstracts the content management away from developers, allowing us to do what we do best, build websites and web applications. And Umbraco is open source and utilises the Microsoft technology stack. As part of the Umbraco community accessibility team, we're helping to make the back office more accessible. The back office is the bit the developers use to create the relationship between code and the site or web app, and content editors and authors use to maintain their websites and web applications. I work for Sigma Consulting Solutions. They're a human-centered research, design and development company. We're based in Macclesfield, but with an office in Cambridge. We're 50 people in the UK, but we're owned by Sigma AB, which employs about 5,000 people worldwide. At Sigma, I wear many hats, one of which is as an Umbraco back office developer, integrating the HTML written by our front end team with Umbraco, as well as integrating Umbraco with other systems such as Microsoft Dynamics. Sigma works across many sectors, including charities and with public and private sector clients. One of the projects myself and my colleague Danny are working on is We4Authors. This is a cluster project with Funker, who are leading the project. It's funded by the European Commission. We4Authors is a collaboration between different authoring tools with the goal of the tools better supporting authors in creating accessible content, and TinyMC is observing. So tonight I'm going to give you a quick introduction into accessibility. I'll give you some examples of the different challenges the users who access your website and applications may have, some of the assistive technology they may use to overcome them. And also I'll show some tools to aid building websites and testing them for accessibility. The tools will include Visual Studio, Azure Pipelines and other developer tools. And I'll cover some things to consider when building accessible websites and applications from the start. I will touch on something called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and they're included in the slide deck, which I'll share after the talk. So first off, what does accessibility mean in the context of the web? So Tim Berners-Lee, who is widely regarded as the founder of the internet, has described the power of the web as being in its universality, that access by everyone, regardless of disability, is an essential aspect. So the UN Convention on Rights for Persons with Disabilities recognises access to information and communication technologies, including the web, as a basic human right. To put it another way, we should be making websites and web applications accessible and more inclusive. In the UK, there's 14.1 million people with a disability. That's about 21% of users. Or if we put that another way, there's roughly 22% of the population, according to Optimax, who have brown eyes. Imagine excluding people with brown eyes from working with our websites and applications. The web provides a platform for equal access and equal opportunity for everybody. And accessibility supports social inclusion for people with disabilities. Accessibility can improve the usability for everyone. For example, the Accessibility Initiative has removed reliance on a mouse for input, and this is a key accessibility requirement. So feedback from Umbraco HQ on the work has been the keyboard navigation improvements are super helpful, even if you don't have any disabilities. There's much fewer need to grab the mouse while doing your Umbraco work, which can help a lot in productivity. Accessibility also aids SEO, which I'll touch on briefly. And also globally, the number of people with disabilities is over 1 billion, with a spending power of more than 6 trillion. There's also a legal requirement to comply based on where you are in the world. I've pulled out some of the acts that are covered here and some key dates. But in essence, if you build a website which meets Wcag 2.1 level AA criteria, you should comply with these laws. So what is Wcag? Wcag stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. They're primarily intended for giving guidance as to how websites and applications and content should work for people with different abilities using different devices. So I'll just go through these brief bullet points quickly. Perceivable means that information and user interface components must be presented in a way that people can perceive content. For example, we provide alternative text for images, which allows it to be read in other forms like large print, braille, speech, and so on. Operable means making all the websites function and applications functionable and available from a keyboard and as many alternative inputs as possible. We should also help users navigate and find content by providing consistent navigation and consistent identification of elements. We shouldn't produce any content that causes seizures or physical reactions. For example, we shouldn't have more than 3 flashes per second in any content. Understandable means making the text readable and understandable. Text should have a reading age level of lower secondary level education, so in the UK I think that's year 9. And finally, we should have robust applications. This means when we write HTML, it validates with the specification we set for in the schema that we're working with. And if we display status messages, then assistive technology should get the notification without having to focus on those status messages. There's 3 levels. A is the minimum level. Without addressing those items, barriers exist that cannot be overcome by assistive technology. AA, this builds on A and it's more accessible. And this criteria establishes a level of accessibility which should work with most assistive technology on desktop and mobile devices. And AAA, which is even more accessible than AA. And some should be noted that some AAA criteria cannot be applied everywhere. So we recommend meeting it where you can. So as I said, I'm going to give you a quick introduction into assistive technology. Assistive technology is any device, software or equipment that helps people work around their challenges. I'm going to give you examples of technology that could be used on the web. The reason I want to do this is I want to show you that people using your websites and applications have different challenges and the types of technology they may use to overcome them. We need to consider these when designing, developing and writing contents for websites and web applications. Also, whilst I've suggested some of the technology may be used to overcome a particular challenge, its use isn't limited to that challenge. So I'm going to talk to you about dyslexia, colour blindness, visual impairments, hearing loss and restricted movement. And I'll talk to you, I'll demonstrate dyslexia, colour blindness and visual impairments using the toolbar, the Silk-Tide toolbar to simulate them. The list I've detailed isn't exhaustive, and if I miss something, please don't take offence. And for anyone impacted by the demo, I've included links at the end of my talk. First off, I'm going to talk about dyslexia, and because I want to define it correctly, I'm going to quote from the British Dyslexia Association, who have adopted the following definition. Dyslexia primarily affects the skills involved in accurate, fluent word reading and spelling. Characteristic features of dyslexia are difficulties in phonological awareness, verbal memory, and verbal processing speed. The signs and symptoms of dyslexia do differ from person to person, and each individual with dyslexia will have a unique pattern of strengths and weaknesses. So I'm going to demo this with the Silk-Tide toolbar. Hopefully you can all see the text. So if I turn on the simulator for dyslexia, you should start to see the words in the text jump around. And so you'll see that reading is difficult and that it's hard to recognise words and associate them with the correct sounds. This is called decoding, and decoding must be automatic in order for people to read fluently. The act of decoding text word by word consumes much of our mental energy, and most people use that for understanding what they read. And the more severe your dyslexia, the harder you have to work to process the content. So now it's really moving around, so people with dyslexia with this level of severity would really struggle. Turn that off and go back to the slide deck. So people, there is some assistive technology that will aid people with dyslexia. And as with all assistive technology, there isn't one thing that works for everyone. And a couple of examples that people may use include e-readers for help reading the books, as they've got inbuilt text-to-speech, and also text-to-speech itself, software, and that will help people understand the material they're looking at and working with, and help them to proofread and check their own work. Next off, I want to talk about colour blindness. Most colourblind people are able to see things as clearly as other people, but they're unable to fully see red, green or blue light. There are different colour blindness types, and there are extremely rare cases where people are unable to see any colour at all. And colour blindness impacts 1 in 12 men and 1 in 200 women, or 3 million of the British population. Before I started working in accessibility, I thought there was one type of colour blindness, red-green, and that's predominantly down to the fault of the colour blindness tests that we've probably all undertaken. But as we'll see from the silk-tied toolbar, there's actually different types of colour blindness depending on how your eyes perceive colour. I apologise in advance, but I'm going to oversimplify colour blindness. As you probably already know, colours are formed from red, green and blue, and we have cones in our eyes that should process these colours. If we're colourblind, our cones are either not working properly, so we have a weaker recognition of that colour, or they're not working at all, in which case we're completely colourblind in that colour. And because of the ways our eyes work, there's actually 8 different types of colour blindness. Thought I'd show this using this iStock Photos website picture. So there's 6 birds in here in this picture. I hope you can see them. The 3 I want you to focus on are the blue tit, which has a blue head and a blue tail, a yellow belly and a green back. The bullfinch, which has a red belly, and the northern cardinal, which is different shades of red. There's a lot to simulate, so I'm only going to pick a handful. If we make the red appear weak, you'll see that the northern cardinal's gone brown. And when we make it greatly reduced, we filtered out the red almost completely, and it's gone this greeny browny colour to me. And the same happens when I turn off blue, make blue appear weak, it filters out the blue on the blue tit, so we see the colour of the head go slightly grey blue, and the tail, and it's started to filter out the blue in the yellow on the belly and on the green on the back, because that particular green's made up with yellow as well, with almost all the colours. And then if we make it completely reduced, we see that blue is completely removed and the blue tick completely changes colour. And then if it's weak, the colours become washed out. So if colours appear weak, it becomes washed out, and if they're greatly reduced, it becomes grey. So what this means is that what we've designed is not necessarily what people will see. It's important to note that colourblind people can still perceive contrast as well as differences in hue, saturation and brightness, and many colourblind individuals report being better able to distinguish between bright colours rather than dim ones. And these are some of the reasons we need to consider contrast and colour when we're building our websites and applications. I want to show you a real-world example of the impact of our colour choices for people with colour blindness. You might remember a small event back in 2018 called the Football World Cup. There were a number of games in this where colourblind fans couldn't follow the game, and they were games between South Korea and Germany and Russia and Saudi Arabia, and this is because the teams played in red and green kits. So I've got an example of how someone without colour blindness would see here. There's a green person on the left, there's a person wearing green kit on the right, and there's a person wearing red kit in the middle. If we look at with the filter applied, you'll see all the players are in the same colour and they merge into the pitch. It's estimated that worldwide there are 320 million people who are colourblind. It's also worth noticing that statistically colour blindness affects 1 player in every men's football team. So with 320 million people and half the planet with colour blindness and half the planet were projected to watch the match, there are a lot of people who couldn't follow the cup clearly. So there is some assistive technology available in different browsers and on different operating systems. You've probably spotted by now I'm a Chrome user and a Windows user, so I'm going to give some examples in Chrome and Windows. The first assistive technology that may help is, just remove this, is the high contrast plugin. And if I change the contrast here, you can see the text starts to change and the colours start to change, and this can help people overcome various different colour related challenges. People may also use the colour enhancer plugin. So this is more personalised to you. You can base it on your colour choices, on what you can see via colour, and then adjust it until you can see on contrast. So that's very personalised to how you would what works for you. Next up, I want to talk about visual impairments. Approximately there's 350,000 blind and partially sighted people in the UK. Not all of those will have the same visual impairments, and I just want to go through a handful now. If I use the silk tie toolbar again, I can show you how someone with a cataract may perceive your website or application. So you'll see that the content here starts to blur. Cataract is the clouding of the normally clear lens of your eye. The NHS website describes the process of age-related cataract growth as follows. When we're young, our lenses are usually like clear glass, allowing us to see through them. As we get older, they start to become frosted like bathroom glass and begin to limit our vision. Cataracts often develop slowly and can often affect both one or both eyes. Symptoms may include faded colours, blurry or double vision, halos around light, and trouble with bright lights and trouble seeing at night. It's not entirely clear what the cause of age-related cataracts is, but some things may increase your risk, including a family history of cataracts, diabetes, and eye injury. I'll show you tunnel vision now. So there's two types of tunnel vision. There's loss of peripheral vision and loss of central vision. Peripheral vision is the vision around the edges of your field, and if I just turn on the simulator, when you lose it, as you can see here, you lose the vision around, in this case, around the edge of the website, it means that content on the edge of your page may be missed, or on your application it may be missed, and users have to turn their head to see the content. Loss of peripheral vision is normally associated with glaucoma, which is a condition that damages your eye's optic nerve, and it gets worse over time. It's often linked to a build-up of pressure inside your eye. And glaucoma tends to run in families, and you won't usually get it till later in life. There's also central vision loss, as I said. So central vision is the vision in the middle of your visual field. Loss of central vision means that you can't see directly ahead of you, as demoed here. This means users will have to work hard to view the content in the middle of your page or application. Loss of central vision is normally associated with age-related macular degeneration, and this tends to happen to people who are over 50 years old, have hypertension or high blood pressure, and have a high family history of age-related macular degeneration. One item missing from the simulator is diabetic retinopathy. This is an eye condition that causes changes to the blood vessels in the retina. If we look at the top picture here, you can see the retina is the membrane at the back of the eye that covers it, and it is highly sensitive and converts any light that hits the eye into signals that can be interpreted by the brain. Diabetic retinopathy, which is this image at the bottom here, diabetic retinopathy damages the blood vessels within the retinal tissue, causes them to leak fluid and distort vision. So you can see on this picture here, the visions become distorted due to diabetic retinopathy. It usually affects both eyes, and when left untreated, it can scar and damage your retina. And it's the most common cause of vision loss for people with diabetes. So there's different assistive technology, again, that people with visual impairments may use. People may use the smartphone, as well as having screen reader capabilities, which I'll show you in a minute. They've opened up a whole range of possibilities for users, can help people recognise money, identify colours, scan barcodes and read product information, as well as helping them to navigate in new cities. In Windows, if we go to the start bar and search for ease of access vision settings, you've got a whole host of settings around accessibility here that you can change. Rather than change them on the browser, you can change them and impact everything. So you can make the text bigger, you can make change the brightness, you change the size of the text and the apps on your display. There's the mouse pointer. Again, you can change the size of that, the colour of it, and you do the same with the cursor. So you can change the size of the cursor, so hopefully you'll see that grow there. And you can change the cursor thickness. So if you look down at the ABC at the bottom, you should see that. So that helps people work with applications. You've got the Magnifier colour filters. So again, like I showed you on Chrome, we can turn colour filters on to invert the colour, change the grayscale, but also we can change the colour filters to use the colour blindness that we might have been diagnosed with. So this will also help you with the accessibility settings, with using your applications. Again, there's a high contrast setting, which if I demo it, it'll restart my display. And there's a narrator, and there's some audio and interaction settings as well. So there's a lot within Windows to help with accessibility. People may also use other devices and technology to help. They may use a Braille display, which is a keyboard-like device that will translate the text on the screen into Braille and enable blind or deafblind people to read the text using their fingers. We also have screen readers and magnification software. So I'll take you through a few things before I take you through the screen reader that make a website both accessible and usable. So on the BBC website, we have a menu at the top, and as we navigate through the site, we see that the menu is consistent. We also see the structure of each page is the same. Almost the child page from the menu always has sub-menu items, and when we click through to them, we always have 2/3 of the screen with content and the right third of the screen with features and storage. So everything within the site is extremely consistent. And when we tab through the site, you can see the tabbing is highlighted, which makes it really easy for people to know where they are. If I compare that with this site, you can see I can tab through so far and see where I'm focusing. Then I get to the banner, and then all of a sudden I've tabbed off and I've gone to this buy cinema option, not to this book now, choose a cinema option. So the tab ordering isn't quite right on this website. The next thing that I'll show you that helps accessibility is if I view the source, you'll see at the top we've got the document type defined. Let me just zoom in a bit for you. You'll see at the top we've got the document type defined. We then have the language defined. So it says ENGB here. And this helps, the document type helps the assistive technology understand what is being read and parsed, and the language helps the screen readers know how to pronounce the words that it's reading. And we also have a title here, and you'll see it's got the page title followed by the brand title. And it's important to do it in this order because users will probably know they're on your website, but they probably won't know what page of the website they're on. So it's important to do it in those that order. So if we go back to the BBC source page, what I want to do now is just demo it using a screen reader. So when I load it up, the screen reader will talk straight away, and it will read out the top of the page until I move it on, and then it will read out the text under the cursor here and the cursor here, and then I'm going to show you tabbing through the menu. And then once that's done, I will stop the speech on the screen reader and talk you through what you heard. So I'm using NVDA.
Welcome. Wild maple trees in serious need of conservation. BBC News. Google Chrome. Wild maple trees in serious need of conservation. 1 in 5 maple species is threatened in the wild. 1 in, known for the vivid color of their autumn. Address and search. Wild maple trees in list with 2 items. Skip to content visited link. Accessibility help. Sign in link. Notification. BBC Sport visited. Weather link. Running app. Note. Run. Note. N. Pref. Set. N. Speech. Panel.
So what you'll have noticed hopefully was I was listening to it at the kind of speed we would talk at. People who use screen readers all the time listen to it a lot quicker than that. And the other thing that you should have noticed was when I was tabbing through the menu at the top, it got quite arduous. If I go back to the top, these are we've got skip to content links, and this is important. This helps skip the menu, and once you've learnt the menu, you know where to go. You just go straight to skip to content, and this is the reason why menus should be consistent throughout the site. No person needs to relearn the menu to know that they can skip it and go straight to what they want to hear. If the next thing that's available in screen readers is the elements listing. So this is one of the reasons why our HTML should be valid markup, because the screen readers will go through what's on the page and pull everything out. So the first type of elements that's pulled out in the case of NVDA is the links. And as a user, I can go down to a link and click either to go to that section where the link is, or to follow the link through and go to that page. We compare that with a site that doesn't have very good links. You'll see why it's important. So on this site, if we look here on the links, you'll see that there's 4 or 5 titles that are the same. And further down, there's an unlabeled link. So as a screen reader user, I don't know where those links will take me. Go back to here and then show you the heading section that's been pulled out. You can see that it's using the structure of the page to give priority to content on the page, and the structure is H1, then H2, then H3. So those are the different heading levels, with H1 being the most important, then H2, so this science and environment, the subtitle, and then H3, the subtitle. And a WebAIM 2017 survey said that most screen reader users actually use headings to navigate through website content, so it's important that the headings are structured correctly. We can see that form fields need to have their labels so that people know which to have people we're going back with them, and the BBC have also got some landmark navigation to help you go through. If I just show you a zoom text now, so doing this is not zooming in on just the text. This is a responsive website. If we click on zoom text, which is a piece of magnification software, and click zoom, you'll see that all that's happening there is the text is resizing, the images are staying the same size. If I look at using zoom text on another site and scroll down, you can see that we've got some white text in a black box, and at the bottom of the white text there's a call to action. If I zoom in on this, you can start to see the white text bleeds into the white background. So if someone, well, even we can't see really what that's saying, and the call to action starts to merge into the next box. So it all becomes quite confusing as to what's going on. So those are some of the key things to look at with screen readers and Zoom text. I wanted to show you why having the lang attribute defined for the correct language is important.
Accessibility demo. How a screen reader sounds when you don't define the language attribute in your HTML. Example with quote lang quote attribute defined as quote pt-br quote for Brazilian Portuguese on site.
Tab. Cursos da Teca Assistiva link. Tab. Todos os cursos link. Tab. Sobre Teca Assistiva link. Tab. Acessibilidade link. Tab. Cadastrar link. Tab. Entrar link.
Example without quote lang quote attribute defined, which defaults to English.
Tab.
Cursos.tech assistive link.
Tab.
Todos os cursos link.
Tab.
Sobre tech assistive link.
So hopefully that shows why it's important to set a language attribute on the page. If you don't, you do sort of, the page does sound like an English person abroad. Next up, I want to talk about people who have hearing loss. There's about 9 million people in the UK who are deaf or hard of hearing, and we need to make sure we share content with them as well. And it's really important because people are now uploading more and more video content to YouTube, Facebook, Instagram and TikTok and so on. So when we do the uploads, we need to make sure the videos have captions and transcripts. And this will also help people who are situationally deaf, such as commuters or people watching videos while their other half's asleep, and they'll be watching with captions. So we can't always rely on auto captioning to convey meaning. I've got two pictures here of an Umbraco cloud captioning, and the top one is what has been added on the YouTube video by Umbraco Cloud, and it says the types of sites we use Umbraco Cloud for. And then I switched on the auto captioning and you'll see it says of sites we use in Brockville code. So auto captioning doesn't always convey the correct meaning, and we really need to make sure we apply our own captions if it's not correct. Otherwise, not everyone is able to perceive and understand the content we upload. We also need to make sure that the colour contrast we pick if we do manual captions is correct. And we also upload with transcripts. All this will help people understand the content we upload. And when we play back the content, we need to make sure we give users the options to stop, start, pause, rewind and fast forward content, as this gives people the chance to pause and process the content that's being displayed. And it really helps people who are using captions and can't read as fast as the captions are being presented. We also need to make sure any video conferencing software we use supports captions, as well as helping people who are deaf and hard of hearing. They can help people with a noisy environment, and this is particularly important as we're holding more and more meetings online due to COVID. On Microsoft Teams at Sigma, we've been able to turn on captioning with a click of a button, and it's really helped one of our deaf colleagues remain part of the team and be involved in everything that we do. Speech recognition software also helps translate text to speech, and speech to recognition software not only helps deaf people, as shown in the previous slides, it can help people dictate notes and therefore help people who have dyslexia and help them write without worrying about spelling errors. And finally, I want to talk about other assisted ways of entering and working with websites and applications. So there's head pointers, eye tracking and motion tracking hardware and software, and single switch entry devices. Probably all seen Stephen Hawking. He had ALS. He used a single switch device when he lost the ability to communicate with his voice, and then when he used eye tracking software to communicate when he lost the ability to use his hands. So it's really important that when we design and develop our applications and websites, that we consider all assistive technology and people's challenges. I did say I'd do a very quick overview of SEO and accessibility. It's important to note that SEO can aid, accessibility can aid SEO, but SEO doesn't necessarily aid accessibility. So the introduction, using the title tag, not only does it tell people where they're on the site, it can help search engines tell the user where they will go to when they click on the link, and it'll provide context for when the site's crawled. The H1 tag indicates the main topic of the page, so that's given a lot of weighting by search engines. It's important to note that even though HTML5 allows multiple H1s, we shouldn't do it because not all browsers and assistive technology supports multiple H1s. HTML5 introduced elements like article, section, header and footer and a whole bunch more. And they do help with some screen readers understand content better, and they may help search engines understand the markup moving forward. We do use hidden text for when we may need to describe something in more detail, like an infographic, because obviously screen readers don't, and other assistive technology can't tell what's in the infographic, and alt text isn't the best choice there. It's important to note that hidden text isn't given any weighting by search engines. They view that as keyword stuffing, and because of that, search engines will also consider font size and colour to make sure you're not trying to stuff the results as well. A few tools here for aiding building and testing for accessibility. Most of the automated tools we utilise for accessibility testing use Core for testing. This is an open source framework, and the aim is to return 0 false positives. I'll give a quick demo now. So the first place we would use it is in Visual Studio. You can use it as part of the Web Accessibility Checker extension, or with the Web Essentials extension. The Web Essentials extension includes the Accessibility Checker and about 15 other plugins, one of which is the Package Security Alerts, which you may also find useful for your development processes. So I've got Visual Studio I've prepared earlier, and I've got the Web Essentials extension in it, which is why it's already reporting this security error. To use the it's Package Security Alerts, which is why it's reporting that error. To use the Web Extensions plugin, I've already installed it, and if I go to a HTML page like I've done here and click Tools and check for accessibility, it will run the validation once I click Validate, and I get a whole host of warnings here, prioritised against the validation rule I've just selected. So it says I've got a missing alt text here, and also gives me some warnings about my headers. Now, if you're like me, you don't actually build, you don't always write your HTML and your app straight into the page. You might pull the content in from different areas. So you can use Browser Link to do this. I'll just launch a demo site now. The demo site I'm using is a starter kit supplied by Paul Seal. He's aware of the accessibility issues I'm going to show, and he suggested it might be a good project for someone to fix during Hacktoberfest. And Hacktoberfest is a month-long festival dedicated to contributing to open source software. So I've loaded the starter kit. If I just move that out of the way and I click on the browser link extensions here and run now on all browsers, it'll go off and run a report against that browser, and we can start to see the errors on the page. These are errors that wouldn't be reported directly because this page is pulled together by views and partial views. And I can move to another page, and then I can use the Web Essentials plugin to kick off an accessibility checker from there, and that will then report back to Visual Studio. Now, using Visual Studio is great. It means we capture a lot of errors as part of our build, but because we're using extensions, they're obviously not going to work in our build pipelines. So Azure DevOps has got an accessibility checker task. This is what it looks like when you pick it from the task list, and this is the configuration options. So you give it a URL and you select the accessibility settings you want to run it against. This is a great little plugin, but if you're like me, you tend to play with your technology before you read the instructions. In this case, you do need to read the instructions first. It will only run on a virtual machine or on a server. You'll need Azure DevOps Release Agent on it, but you should have that already on it in order to get your deployments to work. And you'll need Firefox and Gecko driver and Node.js installed. Once installed, you put it to run after your deployment task. This is so it runs against your latest code base that you've just deployed, and then it will run the checks against the URL you've defined. It is an easy option to configure once you've got the prerequisites installed. However, I do have to say my first test failed because it doesn't work with an iPhone. And as you probably noticed, you do need to specify a URL at a time. So it's a quick win, but it's probably not long term. So the next thing you can use in DevOps is Axe. This is a task that utilizes Selenium and C# or Selenium and TypeScript or JavaScript, or you can look at using Cypress.io. In all honesty, I haven't used them, and they're next up as part of our review process, a review of our release processes. There are also some Chrome extensions that can be used. So we've got Chrome DevTools, which has got the Lighthouse option. There's a Wave checker, a Site Improve, and a Wcag contrast checker. Probably haven't got time to demo all of those, but I do want to demo the Lighthouse one to you. So Google recommend that we use it in an incognito mode, just so that you haven't got any plugins interacting with the score and impacting it. To load it, you just go to DevTools like you would normally in Chrome, and it's on this Lighthouse tab. And I've set it up so it just runs accessibility testing on the desktop, but you can run it on different categories. And whilst it will come back with a score out of 100, and this one is 96% accessible. It's important to note that none of the automated tools I've shown are a replacement for manual testing, and it's only when automated tests have passed that manual testing should start. And we need to make sure that we build websites and applications accessible from the start. The Web Experience Toolkit has broken down the criteria by roles and definitions, and it shows that everyone in a project is responsible for making sure that the team should make projects accessible. And no, even though the project manager hasn't got anything against them for the criteria, they are responsible for making sure that it all happens. I've got a few slides on design, so making the site consistent, allowing users to decide what they're seeing, checking the colour contrast, and if colour infers meaning. So making sure that, for example, red and green don't use red, just red for stop and green for go. There's actually no such thing as colour contrast in terms of Wcag 2. It's actually the measure of difference in perceived luminance between two colours. And this is the brightness difference expressed as a ratio ranging from 1:1 for white text on a white background, for example, and 21:1 for black text on a white background. We have to consider a number of things with content. This list isn't limited, it's not complete, but it's a few examples of things to consider. And then we also need to consider typography. So we're shouting when we use capitals, but it's also hard to read, and text in italics and underlined text can be hard for people with dyslexia to read. We need to consider text alignment. When text is left align, when we read text, sorry, we look for left align, and we look for the start at the end of the line. So when text is centered, it makes it hard to find the start of the lines and the end of the lines. And if we justify text, we put spaces, extra spaces between the characters, the words, and this makes it harder for the flow to work. So in summary, we need to design and build for accessibility from the start. Automated accessibility testing helps, but it's not a replacement for manual testing. Accessibility supports social inclusion for people with disabilities. Accessibility can improve usability for everyone. Accessibility aids in SEO, and developed the right way, the internet provides equality of opportunity and social inclusion for everyone. I'd like to give a big shout out to everyone for coming and for listening, and also to the Umbraco back office accessibility team and the community. So thank you all.